Hello and greetings, fellow StarCrafters, and welcome back to Game 2 between Socke, as we see him high-fiving FXOMoonan over here. As I said in the previous game, and I'll go ahead and put the names tab up there. As I said in the previous game, this is from the IGN Pro League 2 Qualifiers. It's between two very good players, FXOMoonan, also known as Peter Kim. He's won a lot of smaller tournaments. He hasn't necessarily had a huge breakout tournament where he's done particularly well. And Socke, who's actually known for his carrier play, interestingly enough. Oh, and actually, he's asking... Oh, there you go. He was asking what kind of map was this, because in the MLG version of the map, if you didn't know, your opponent can only spawn in cross positions. So it's either here, here, or here, here. It's never just like this, as you see. Now, actually, though, this is the... it's actually less relevant because the MLG version, they're talking about the rocks are regular here. And the reason that MLG made that change, that this map is now changed, so that there's no destructible rocks into the side of your base, is that people what you would do is you'd put a bunch of siege tanks here, or Protoss, you'd put a bunch of Colossus here, and just slow push into the person's base. And they thought that either wasn't fun, or it was overpowered, or some sort of combination of the two, and that's why they kind of made the change, in which, there's a couple of possible fixes. Blizzard changed the map. That's what the current this is what the current Shakuras Plateau looks like, is with those destructible rocks like this. See, a regular start... well, let's go ahead and talk about previous game. Previous game was absolutely epic. I did not think that FXOMoonan was able to come back from that. His expansion was 3 or 4 minutes late, but you saw that, if you fall behind, you don't necessarily have to take action right away in order to fix it. You can take sort of a delayed action, in which you just try to fight for little advantages and try to build your way back up slowly but surely, because if you're behind by a decent amount early on, it's actually you can the discrepancy, like let's say in supply, if you're down by 15 supply, it becomes less as the game goes on because your army becomes bigger as a whole, so proportionally speaking it's less. And that kind of same concept applies to the economy, and the Terran player of course can catch up really quickly, especially when he is able to secure the gold, like FXOMoonan was able to do so in that game, because all the mules that you can drop in the gold, and mules provide such a big bonus because they get the additional 40% of minerals as well, and they have so much more income that's just a big bonus for Terran. And so that was actually really terrific. I'm a Terran player, so I'm always a fan when the Terran wins. Although I don't discriminate. I love watching all of the races play, especially Protoss. I really do like the Protoss race. It's definitely my second. Well, I really like all the races. I play as random whenever I'm playing multiplayer, and I would play as random if I had a good enough knowledge of build orders as it was in 1v1. But it's just so difficult to be able to know all those positions. This Marine's gonna scare that probe away. Get out of here, you little robot. And the probe's in a little blue jet stream. Meanwhile, the Marine doesn't get any sort of jet stream. He has to walk. It must be so hard to be a Marine, be able to walk. Marauders get the little power suits. SCVs get the little jets. Marines just have to walk. And, they have to run when they take the stim pack. And it hurts them to take the stim pack, It's just not a very nice knife. And not to mention all the storms and damage you take. How many Marines do you think the average Terran player goes through in a game? Because if you think about it, you build like 3, 4... a lot of games on 2 or on like 3 bases, let's say, you have like 6 barracks. You must go through so many Marines. Each Marine that you end the game with must have died 5 or 6 times at the end of it. That's a lot of casualties. It's almost like Terran players should be a little more careful, with their soldiers. Right, which, as we saw in the last game, when he picked up his soldiers and actually was able to bring those Marines back home, FXOMoonan cares about his soldiers, and he cares about you. Join him today. We can talk about this map a little bit. This is a huge map, obviously, Shakuras Plateau, and it's got a lot of expansions. If you look, there's 4 on this side, 4 on this side. Those are typically the ones that are taken. Occasionally you see the closer one of these taken. On really long games, you see this one taken. It's relatively rare that you'll see the middle one taken, just because it's so easy to kind of drop in here and it's so hard to reinforce as the other player kind of point of view. We see a typical bio build going down on the part of the Terran player. He's putting a bunker up just like he did in the previous game, just to make sure he's safe from any sort of shenanigans that the Protoss player is thinking about. But as we see, as almost the exact same build, and actually this is a little bit of a riskier build. This is a 2 warp gate expansion instead of a typical like a 3 warp gate expansion. But but it's a 2-gain to Robo. Very safe, relatively safe build on the Protoss player's part, especially with a distance such as this. Most Terran players don't want to attack here because they have to dog it. You have Marines have to jog all the way across. Oh, one last thing I'll talk about is the supply depots. Neutral supply depots, as I mentioned in previous casts, that's a stop. It's typically only really matters in a either Protoss versus Zerg or Terran versus Zerg, in which you use 2 bunkers, or on the Protoss player's part, which is more common. And that SCV is going to get blasted apart by those little sentries, not wanting him to see anything. Where the Protoss player typically would drop 3 pylons, be able to block off the ramp, put a cannon behind it. Zerg player can't expand until he gets either roaches or banelings, and by then the Protoss player is just way ahead. So just be able to stop those kinds of shenanigans, not really going to have much of an effect in these games. We see a little bit of wall off here. This is useful to be able to prevent any sort of run-bys from the Protoss player's part, especially from like stalkers, while the Terran player army isn't particularly strong. We do see the orbital command is now finished. He'll be moving it into its new position as soon as he's ready. We also see a reactor going down on the factory. Factory will probably lift off and scout after that, and then give its be so kind as to give its reactor to the starport. We also see the engineering bays down. I assume weapons level 1 will be coming sometime soon. Also, these turrets are very useful in case the Protoss player is going for some sort of Dark Templar expand, which is it's not a super popular build, but it's definitely done, and it can be very effective against Terran players because until you get a Raven, you really can't move out with your army, you know. And if you don't have turrets, then you take a lot of damage from those Dark Templars, or else you just use a lot of scans against them, you know. And you have to use a scan for each one if the Protoss player plays it, and dropping 3 mules right in a row there. You know, it must be really dangerous dropping these mules right next to each other. You'd think there'd be a little bit of a clearance, somebody like with a little like flashlights guy. You can't see me right now, but I'm waving my hands like the flashlight guy for airplanes in an airport. We see some medevacs going down, and actually, let me go ahead and we're back. You see the medevacs being built here. This is going to be very useful for, of course, healing the Marines, and of course for doing drops. You see the air distance is much shorter than the ground distances, in which you can actually watch the it's a Marine in this case. You can just shoot that at probe, and if that probe doesn't get a command from Socke anytime soon, he's going to go down in a blaze of bullets. Oh, the lowly life of a probe. One moment, sorry about that. And we're back. Probe is taken out. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why my computer's a little freaking out right now. It ran perfectly well in the last game, so it shouldn't be lagging. In this game, especially since the last game was much longer and dealt with a lot more, units and fighting going on. So really, my computer shouldn't be lagging right now. Please stop lagging. This is really annoying. As I'm sure. See a photon cannon going down. I guess this is probably just for Banshee defense primarily, just to make sure Terran player doesn't sneak anything by. See, out of his builds. Well, darn. All right, we're going back. This appears to be better so far. Sorry, hopefully I won't have to stop again. Nice move on FXO's part, being able to look for those hidden pylons around. Protoss players love to leave little pylons hiding around all around different sorts of places. The reason they like to leave pylons around is obviously you can warp units in. It gives them spotting too, so if you saw like a drop that was going around to go around the Protoss player's base or drop one of his higher bases, you'd be able to spot it with the pylon and react to it in time. Terran player, of course, being smart about that, is able to recognize that and deal with it. You know, one thing I've never really understood is why mules run on batteries and their batteries run out. That's the reason, by the way, that they have a timed life. So first of all, you need a battery recharger. Second of all, the problem with mules, why do they fall apart when their batteries go away? Like, you think like, well, first of all, you know, if your battery goes dead in your car, first of all, you jump the car. And second of all, if you can't jump the car, you just get a new battery. So I don't really get why mules fall apart. It seems like some improper engineering on the part of the Terran race there. Something the Confederacy or I believe the Terran Dominion should look into when they're designing new weapons, or maybe that'll be an upgrade in the new campaign. Speaking of which, as long as there's a little bit of a lull here, Heart of the Swarm. I am so excited for Heart of the Swarm. That's going to be absolutely terrific. I do want to talk about the game for just a little bit right now, though. You see the Protoss player going for armor first before they went for weapons. Armor is extremely important for the Protoss player because it makes Marines deal so much less damage against Zealots. And Zealots are kind of the backbone of the Protoss army in terms of its in terms of it fighting a Terran army. Because the main reason is that Zealots can tank so much damage because Marauders only deal 10 damage to them, less because of their armor. 9 damage because of their armor base. It becomes 8 with the armor upgrade. And oh my goodness.